As an officer of the House of Commons in my role, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you in Parliament this afternoon. Our two main tasks at the NAO are to give Parliament and taxpayers assurance that public money is properly accounted for and spent well. And this afternoon I'm focusing on the second of those, our assessments of value for money. I live in hope that one day you'll be equally keen to attend a speech on accounting and auditing standards. And indeed, the importance of timely and effective public audit is currently being highlighted by what are serious delays in the audited accounts of England's local authorities. And while the position on timely accounts is much better in central government, the need for a stronger focus on value for money and ensuring people receive high quality public services is just as pressing at the national level too. And that's where the independent NAO operates. We help Parliament scrutinise how government's spending public money, as Meg has described. And today I'd like to focus on what the NAO's work tells us about getting the most out of every pound that government spends. I'll use the shorthand of efficiency and productivity to cover a range of opportunities for delivering more effective services at a lower cost. The tax spending and borrowing forecasts supporting November's autumn statement show that government of whatever complexion faces a tough challenge in the years ahead. The reasons for this are well known to all of you in this room, so I'll summarise them only briefly. Demand for many services will continue to rise as the number of older people increases. Parts of our national infrastructure are crumbling. Maintenance backlogs persist in large parts of the public estate, impeding service delivery and costing more to put right in the long run. On the digital front, out-of-date IT systems are slowing the modernisation of many public services, and they interfere with the efficient working of government, as well as increasing the risk of successful cyber attacks, as we've seen recently, and maladministration. Higher inflation has increased costs, particularly for large infrastructure projects. And the public sector is finding it harder to retain staff. Turnover in social care roles reached 37% in some areas in 2022. And neither is this problem confined to frontline roles, as evidenced by the thousands of vacancies in digital roles across government. These factors and others have combined to leave public services with a productivity problem. And when you add to this the sharply increased cost of servicing government debt, this is a very challenging fiscal picture. In this speech, I take that fiscal challenge as my starting point. Potential policy measures on tax and spending to address the challenge are outside my remit, and quite rightly, the NAO does not opine on policy priorities. But I do want to make the case that there's good evidence from the NAO's work to believe that government can achieve more with what it already spends, and that this amounts to a material contribution to the fiscal challenge, certainly tens of billions a year. Now, I'm not going to arrive at a specific figure, as this will depend on the extent to which government prioritises pursuing the savings that I'm talking about. And of course, if greater efficiency on this scale was easy, we'd be doing it already. So what I want to set out are what I see as the barriers to improved efficiency and productivity and what may be done about them. So there are, in my view, 5 main areas of financial opportunity: major infrastructure projects, asset management, procurement, digital transformation, and reducing fraud and error. And this is not an exhaustive list, and I make no claim for the novelty of any of these themes. Government is already working on all of them. My point is that the potential financial benefit is far from being fully realised. So taking these in turn, firstly, major infrastructure projects, work by the NAO and the government's own Infrastructure and Projects Authority, and Nick Smallwood is with us this afternoon, has built a strong body of evidence and good practice in delivering major projects. This has helped to drive better performance on some projects, and yet we still see failures of value for money and delivery in others, and sometimes at enormous cost to the taxpayer. Why is that? Our work on both HS2 and the new hospitals programme suggests that for the biggest projects, Whitehall has a governance problem. These two programmes are examples of what I call mega projects, which are arguably too large for the risk to be manageable by the relevant departments and their arm's length bodies. They have overall budgets of many tens of billions and project lifetimes, sometimes spanning decades, let alone parliaments. In both cases, decisions to proceed were not accompanied by sufficiently robust and realistic assessments of affordability. And if overspends then emerge, it's likely that they'll be too large for the host department to manage, and the question becomes one of government's overall priorities. So I think a new approach to the governance of the small number of genuine mega projects is needed, reflecting the scale and nature of the risks involved. This is likely to require governance expertise from outside the relevant department. And I think this would increase the chance of making better go, no-go decisions and effectively holding the project to account for cost control and delivery. So better governance of our largest projects offers significant financial benefits. The second of my 5 areas was asset management. The efficient maintenance and improvement of existing assets is as important as getting value for money in building new infrastructure. After all, new assets will only deliver the promised benefits if they're maintained properly. And capital assets such as schools, hospitals, prisons, roads, and flood defences must be adequately maintained to meet their purpose. All too often, the NAO's recent work has highlighted the false economy of allowing maintenance backlogs to build up. Our recent report on the condition of school buildings showed that more than a third are beyond their design life, leading to higher running costs, and in some cases to emergency repairs which continue to affect pupils, teachers, and parents even now. The same issues are significantly impacting on patient care and costs at many NHS hospitals. So a disciplined approach to asset management with optimised maintenance plans for each part of the public estate is an essential component of the government-wide efficiency drive that I'm recommending. Thirdly, procurement. Each year, government spends around a third of its money buying goods and services. In a recent report, we found that £100 billion worth of contracts awarded by major departments during 21-22, of those, around a third were either direct awards or contract extensions without competition. Government's taken important steps to professionalise procurement by creating the government commercial function, and doing so has already created a significant financial benefit. But despite this, performance remains patchy in places. Government still spends more than it should in some areas because it relies too much on expensive temporary contracts, and too often we see misaligned commercial incentives. Our report on competition in public procurement identified ways of securing further significant savings through improving data, market engagement, and active contract management. Government spend on IT services is an excellent example of where further efficiencies lie. Maximising government's buying power in that market, dominated as it is by global giants, is essential. And the new Procurement Act is a good opportunity to redouble efforts in all these areas. Getting this right is worthwhile, as government's own estimate is that better use of competition can deliver between £4 billion and £8 billion of further annual efficiencies. And that's just in central government. Embedding best practice across the wider public sector would secure further savings. And indeed, our report published last Friday showed that the NHS spends some £3 billion a year outside its dedicated procurement service. And this means that 43% by value of NHS consumables are bought outside the system designed to deliver value for money. There's still considerable value to be achieved in driving better deals for taxpayers and service users. Fourthly, digital transformation. The technology already exists to transform service delivery, reduce costs, and improve the user experience. And government is working to improve its approach to realising benefits and identifying services requiring transformation, led by the Central Data and Digital Office. And this work must replace antiquated IT systems, improve the quality and shareability of data, and recruit and retain scarce skills in high demand across the economy. The challenge is vast. In 2020, DEFRA estimated it would need to spend more than 3/4 of its digital budget addressing legacy system issues. And the MOD is in part reliant on kit dating back to the Cold War for its defence inventory management. But there is good news. Parts of government are showing that it can be done. Following our report on the backlog of new passports caused by the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions in 2022, the Passport Office has responded by improving its customer contacts, building capacity to better manage demand, and continuing its digital transformation. The customer experience is much improved, and the Passport Office is saving money by reducing failure demand. The potential efficiency gains in those services dependent on high volumes of data processing are enormous, with fewer, better paid civil servants delivering more modern and responsive public services and wasting less of their customers' time. And then finally in my list of 5 opportunity areas is reducing fraud, error and tax evasion. Fraudsters, both organised and opportunistic, are targeting public expenditure, often using new technology to do so. And tax evasion deprives government of the resources it's legally due and can ill afford to lose. So government needs up-to-date intelligence on what's happening in these areas, well-targeted defences, and interventions to prevent, detect and recover as much as possible. The losses to the public finances from fraud, error and tax evasion run to billions of pounds a year. Our work provides much evidence of where more effective defences against fraud, better detection and recovery of losses could realise large sums. I point to universal credit, where fraud and error currently cost taxpayers £5.5 billion a year, and tax fraud, where the compliance yield being achieved by HMRC has reduced since the pandemic and is not yet back to its pre-COVID level as a percentage of the tax take. Progress is being made. DWP and HMRC continue to explore how new technology can prevent and detect fraud. The new Public Sector Fraud Authority has created a specialist cadre of fraud investigators, and we'll continue working with them and others across government to identify and tackle this scourge. So that's 5 areas with significant savings each at stake. So why is progress on them not faster? How can we get better at turning these opportunities into real resources? A large part of the answer lies in improving productivity. And before turning to what I think are the most important enablers for better productivity, let me acknowledge the context of the last few years. Civil service leaders have been responding to a succession of extraordinary challenges, from EU exit to COVID-19 to war in Ukraine and an energy and cost of living crisis. These events have consumed the capacity of those who had otherwise been driving some of the strategic changes that I'm outlining. And the challenge now is to focus the energy of the civil service leaders, managers and teams on making the changes necessary to drive better productivity, release resources, despite the inevitability of new emergencies. So what will enable these changes? Firstly, better data. Consistent standards and definitions, along with a greater focus on quality, are essential if citizens are to see service levels rise and costs fall. And without it, government ambitions on artificial intelligence will not be realised, as poor data means arriving at wrong answers only faster. Secondly, innovation and evaluation, which itself relies on good quality data. And in our work, we see plenty of innovative thinking from teams across government who spot the need for operational improvements. Creating an environment where this is encouraged, tested, evaluated and scaled up is proving more challenging. One of the best examples we found of this approach in government is the Department for Education's programme for funding and evaluating promising innovations in children's social services. This is helping the department identify and promote the projects that have the greatest potential to make a difference for children and their families and save the taxpayer money down the line. The aforementioned new hospital programme is establishing a new approach to hospital design and construction by using a standard template, offering the prospect of savings in the cost per hospital, provided, of course, that the template is based on realistic assumptions. And then thirdly, the planning and spending framework can better support this drive for efficiency and productivity. Our recent report on combating the harm from illegal drugs provides a good example of how government needs to work in departmental boundaries to get the most from the available resources. And the Shared Outcomes Fund is aimed at encouraging this approach too. Yet examples like this are still the rare exception, and many other opportunities for better allocative efficiency across government remain to be exploited. The planning and spending process also needs to address the personal and organisational incentives for high performance on efficiency. By personal incentives, I mean demonstrating to talented staff that developing delivery skills is a route to career progression and success. And for the organisation or department, there's a strong argument for retaining a share of the financial return to invest in further improvement. Each of these enablers must be underpinned by a stronger focus on leadership and delivery skills. Whenever we look at a project or service at the NAO, the best predictor of success is the quality of leadership and management. Crucially, the right skills for the job. It's relatively easy to cut spending. It requires skilled leaders and managers to deliver genuine efficiencies that realise resources for government priorities. And we need leaders that have the capability to deliver what's required, achieving the right blend of homegrown talent and expertise from outside. We'll soon be reporting on the civil services approach to getting the most from its leaders and managers, with recommendations aimed at consistently better results in efficient service delivery. So as I mentioned earlier, bringing these enablers of greater productivity together and making them work at scale is a big task. I welcome the launch last year of the government's new efficiency framework, which sets out a more rigorous approach to identifying and measuring efficiency gains across departments. We'll only realise the full potential if government makes improving its productivity a high priority with serious cross-government weight behind it. Some of the savings can be realised quickly, others require upfront investment and will grow over time. So in conclusion, Paul Krugman's well-known line that productivity isn't everything, but it's almost everything, seems particularly relevant to the fiscal challenge facing the UK at the moment. I know that government shares this ambition to make a step change in productivity. There's enough evidence from the positive examples we found in our work to be confident that significant amounts of public money could be freed up for government's priorities. But it will take a disciplined, focused, cross-government approach over several years to fully realise the potential and make the exceptional the norm. For our part, the NAO's programme of value for money work will continue to identify opportunities for better results and greater resilience. We'll also continue to produce our lessons learned reports, and there are examples at the back, where we synthesise the learning from the multiple reports on the same theme. And our good practice guides offering practical advice to those running services and tasked with delivering more efficiently. I look forward to challenging and supporting those of you in government to deliver for taxpayers in the coming years. There's a lot to do, but for now, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.